So you turned in two images. Based on that, I'm guessing that you want this to be a beauty portrait and a character portrait, though neither of these really come across as beauty portraits. They both come across more as character portraits. Let's start off looking at them technically. Your settings look good in both of them, but they're both shot in aperture priority mode. So I would encourage you to always shoot images in manual mode so you have full creative control. And then looking at this image, I think opening up your aperture more would help this image. So we're seeing more of this child who's adorable coming towards us with his training wheels on his bike. I love this point of view where you're low and looking up at him, so he looks a little bit larger than he is. But it gets distracting as we look into the background and we see the cars and the houses. Excuse me. So simplifying this by having a shallower depth of field and just letting us see that he's at a playground, that we have this cement path that he's following and we see the sand by him. I think that would be a better approach to this image. In the same sense, this image could also use a shallower depth of field. But here we can see you're already at f3.5. So how can you push that depth of field to be shallower when you're already shooting at f3.5? Now, I would do that by scooting back a little bit and using a longer lens. Remember, the wider angle your lens is, the wider your depth of field will appear. So f3.5 at 16 millimeters is going to give us a lot of depth of field, where f3.5 at 100 millimeters is going to be a much shallower depth of field. And by having a shallower depth of field, then we're not going to see that stop sign and that caution sign and all those cars in the background. And even the chain link fence in the background. We really just want to focus on this child here as he's enjoying his afternoon out at the playground. I also think that would help with the distortion that we're seeing a bit with the playground as everything's kind of being pushed further away. So for both of these, using a longer lens or a shallower depth of field, getting that a different way, like getting closer to your subject, would work better. Both of these images are not sized or named properly, so that's something else that needs to be updated on your images in order for you to get credit. And this image is definitely the stronger of the two images and feels like more of a character portrait as he's riding his bike. And like I said, we're low, we're looking up at him. He has some determination on his face as he's pedaling towards us. And I just think this gives us more insight into who he is as a person and his like drive to do well riding the bike. Where here it's just a kid coming down the slide. There's nothing that's telling us more about his personality in this image. So I think this image has more power to it and is more of a character portrait.